Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Alex Lopez Talks. I am Alex Lopez, and this is the Alex Lopez Rocks YouTube channel. I want to thank you all for tuning in. And joining us today is the hysterical and incredible Mike Karsok. Mike, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining on. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Mike is a stand-up comedian, and he's also a screenwriter, among many other things. So with that, Mike, actually, before we even continue there, Mike and I have actually known each other for about 20 years. So we went to college together, and, you know, we've stayed friends since. And while I ventured to music, he ventured into acting and comedy and writing.
Yeah.
So Mike, tell us a little bit more about your stand-up and what made you get into it.
So, yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, Alex and I have known each other that long, which is really cool. You're my longest relationship, Alex. Like we said, I don't know how I feel about that, but
I'm not sure if it's that sad or scary. It's sad or scary, or if it's, hey, brotherhood,
it's a good thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I got into it, I mean, as you know, because, you know, I've talked to you about it along the way on the path. Like I started off doing like improv, you know, I started off actually in Boston at Improv Asylum, and then I was in Los Angeles for a little while doing improv at the Second City, which I'm sure people have heard of from Saturday Night Live.
Yep.
And that got me, like, I really enjoyed like being on stage. I was amazed how comfortable I felt up there and actually performing, and wasn't scared by it. And then, you know, fast forward like a couple years later, after I come back from California, I told myself, I was like, all right, you know, I've done the improv thing, like the ensemble thing. I kind of wanted to break off on my own, sort of like a band, you know, like, you know, going on to a solo career, you know, starting your own solo thing, or, you know, a wrestler who's in a tag team breaking off into a solo career, for any wrestling fans out there. It's the only reference I could think of.
There you go. Yeah, me and Mike are also both pretty big pro wrestling fans.
Sports, everything. Yeah.
And sports. So as you can see, he's rocking the Boston black and gold with the Bruins. I'm rocking the Red Sox. So
yeah.
You know where we're from.
Yeah, we're not, no bones about that. Yeah. But yeah, so I did my first stand-up gig in Los Angeles. So I think you might have known about this. I took a class out there from this woman, Judith Shelton. She's a comedian, and she's been on Seinfeld and some stuff. Mm-hmm. My friend, her name's Jet Eveleth. She's a pretty well-known improv in the scene. She got me to take the class, and I just went up there and I actually like fell in love. Like, again, it was very comfortable for me to talk in front of people. And one thing that, you know, I'll let people know about, you know, who don't know me, is I'm legally blind. So that actually, people wonder, like, that actually helps, I think, me on stage, because in my mind, everyone's just looking at me. You know what I mean? Yeah. In my mind, everyone's paying attention, because I've talked to other comedians and stuff who are like, yeah, it's fun to see the people laughing and stuff, but you always want to get that one guy in the back who's like arms crossed or looking at their phone. And I'm like, yeah, that would bug me. I'd be staring right at that person, but, you know, I don't have to worry about that. So I just, in my mind, everyone's looking at me. So
there you go.
So yeah, it doesn't make me nervous, really. I mean, you do get the you know, like I'm sure you with music too, right before you go on stage, those 5 minutes before you get that excited jitter.
Oh yeah, you get that little jolt.
Yep.
That little anxious energy, you know?
Yeah, it's a good energy. It's amazing. I found out too how many like famous comedians and people who've been doing it for decades still get that feeling. You know what I mean? You think it would go away, but people still get that. Like, it's an excited thing, I guess, you know?
Yeah. And if it goes away, it might be time to look into something else, because you know, usually that little anxious energy is kind of like you're revved up because you really care about doing a great performance.
Yeah. No, and that's why I started it. It was in California, and then I came back here and did my second gig at Sally O'Brien's, and this was sort of my sophomore fail. This was like, I didn't have anything written down, and this is where I learned, you know, it's a learning process. You got to write stuff down, you know. And I had a little too much to drink before I went up there, and I remember I don't remember really what I talked about, but I just remember it being just like so awkward, and I remember making one good joke that went over well, but then I went out, like, left that being like, okay, this is a different craft than improv. You got to like write it down and and focus on it. So then I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. so I went through the bomb on the second time, and then I came back at Improv Boston and started doing it there. And that's when the floodgate just opened up completely. Like, yeah, this is what I want to do, like, going forward. And yeah, it's amazing how many people like caring about my situation, you know, my vision and stuff too. So
yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, and you mentioned you were legally blind, and you've actually integrated that into your stand-up.
Yep. I talk a lot about it because it's unique. A lot of people can't, you know, there's no, you don't have to be afraid about people taking your material because they can't really. So I guess that's a thing that's a positive, but more or less, it's more about, I want it to be true about my life and not just talk about, and I think you know this about me too. I never wanted to be someone who went on stage and did like what I call waka waka jokes, you know?
Yeah.
Or like you would say the Uncle Joey,
you know?
the Uncle Joey jokes from Full House or something.
Oh yeah.
Like, just, I never wanted to be someone who went on stage, and you know this. You like, I think everyone knows that part. You're like, ugh, like you just shake your head when someone does that stuff, you know?
Well, there's one Gallagher, and anybody else who's trying to be him. It's kind of
and don't get me wrong,
themselves up for failure, you know?
Yeah, people have their shtick and their things they do, which it works for them, you know. And but mine is definitely more of a storytelling thing about myself and my life. So
yeah.
But
yeah,
people,
it's your life, it's not a gimmick, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, staying truthful to, you know, the vision thing and talking about it has been, you know, amazing. People love it. So
great.
And
now,
I think too, for people, it's a learning experience too. So
yeah, and that's good. You're able to kind of just share your story and educate people on what you're going through in life, but you put a nice little comedic twist to it.
Yeah, I have to, because like my goal with doing this is like, I want people to walk out, if they've never known a blind person, or if they think they know about a blind person, like like I want them to kind of go out and like, oh yeah, they're just like you and me, just you know, like person can't see as well, you know.
Yeah.
So I like going up there because it makes people, when you're comfortable, you make other people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So, and it's been great.
And before you were doing comedy, you were doing some acting, extra work, and you were even writing scripts.
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about that.
Yep, still working on a script, but the first thing like I really got into was doing extra work on movies, and I spent a summer in New York City doing. I started off with Baby Mama, that movie Baby Mama.
Oh, the Tina Fey, Amy Poehler one.
Yeah, got to be in the club scene with them and stand right next to them. You know, they were going out partying and stuff, so they just needed people to be in a club. And I thought it was pretty cool because you just look to your left and there they are standing right there, like 20 feet away from you.
Yeah.
I liked extra work and I liked acting and stuff. I kind of like played around with it. Just, I think people should do that too. Play around with different things. You know, you never know what you're going to like, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And now you did extra work. You were on a couple of TV shows too. You were on Law and Order, I think.
Law and Order.
The regular one, not Special Victims.
Yeah, just the regular one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this is all extra work. But
you did, I think, Dennis Leary's Rescue Me as well, right?
Yep, that was the other one.
Nice.
Extra work is definitely fun. There's a lot of waiting going on. You know, some days you just don't even get called and you get free lunch or you got paid. But a lot of, you know, it is fun to do that stuff. I know people that make a full-time career out of doing that. So
that's great, man.
Yeah.
Now, when you moved to LA, you said you did Second City. You worked with, did you work with the Groundlings as well?
I didn't do Groundlings, but I auditioned there and I did get in. I just didn't go through the program. You know how you have to like go through these programs?
Yeah.
UCB, Groundlings, it's a very sort of underground, like it's a very, I don't know what the word is. It's a culture. It's a very, you know, you have to get into once you're in the doors, then you're there, you know?
Yeah.
But Second City, that was the main one's in Chicago, I should say. I'm sure people know that. But I did the Los Angeles one because I was out there.
Yeah.
Met a lot of great people out there who I still keep in touch with. Big fan. You know, I was doing improv and we were in some improv groups. And like it's just fun because it's like feeding off of like your teammate or your bandmate, you know, doing that stuff. Yeah. But for me with the vision thing too, I started to, I wanted to just kind of, luckily this never happened. I never like fell off stage. I never bumped into anyone. I never did anything that caused harm, you know, physically to myself or something, like crashing into a chair.
Yeah.
So
That's
that
a
was
different,
nothing
that's
else.
a different style of comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a physical comedian for sure.
Yeah.
But the one thing I love about, you know, being, you know, doing stand-up is because it's you, even though it can be, it's just you, but you're not going to worry about falling off stage or do any, you know, things stupid like that. So it's just you and the microphone, you know, it's not a lot of heavy travel.
Yeah. And that's great. I mean, you get to kind of just hone in, like your example actually was a really good one, where, you know, improv is usually like a band and it's freestyling, and you guys are literally just riffing off of one another. But when you're going solo and you're doing your own thing at the stand-up, that's basically your opportunity to bring people in and just tell your story and let it shine and let it resonate with them. And, you know, it's a really,
it's more personal. Because improv, you're playing characters a lot, and it's just like, that was like 2017 was a shift for me. Like I wanted to you know, I'll do, you know, I would always do an improv thing again with somebody, you know, it's not that I don't like it. It's just stand up was more like where I wanted to go. And it's more personal. Like I said, there's nothing better than, like, you probably know, like, for songwriting, there's nothing better than when you write something down and then you perform it in front of people and then they like it, something you came up with, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Just randomly in your room or something, you know?
Yeah, there you get that rush of, like, you know, of the reaction, you know. Usually for musicians, it's like just hearing somebody sing along or hearing somebody applause or just feeling that energy from the audience. I'm guessing, like, with comedians, you guys probably gauge it via applause and laughter.
Yep, exactly. There's that's all that's all I do. I just listen, you know. I just literally listen for the applause, you know. Sometimes you hear some snorts from people, which is always funny to make someone snort.
Oh yeah, that's bonus.
Yeah, I remember one time a girl, and this is why I try to stay true to my comedy. I was doing a set, I think it was up in Salem, and she was laughing, she was snorting, and then, like, I did a joke, and then she was like, "Oh, that's not true," and I was like, damn it, it wasn't true. Like, she knew, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, but that's good that the audience kind of keeps you honest on there, where it's like, you know, they're gonna see what works and what you're gonna be able to see what works with them and what doesn't, and kind of be keeping it, you know, sincere, I think, is what's worked for you.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of going out and doing open mics and doing different places. People will tell you how, you know, what's working. You know, people will give you the applaud, you know, the approval of the laugh. And then, you know, I've seen people go up and just complete silence. So, you know, but I will say this too. I've met a lot of great people in the comedy communities in Boston, New England. There's a lot of good people, and that was the thing I wasn't sure about. Like, when you go into that world, you're like, oh man, this seems so scary. Like, everyone's out for themselves or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But nah, like, after a while, when you start, like, I immediately started clicking with people. You know, I'm pretty friendly as it is, and so I like to get to know people. And I can't. There really is nobody that I've met that, like, oh, I think they're a bad apple or anything. So, good. It's a good. Boston's got a pretty good scene.
Yeah, and that's great. You know, you usually don't hear about, like, Boston for when it comes to the comedy scene, but yeah, I mean, when it's, you know, you usually think New York or LA, but Boston has a very diverse scene when it comes to comedy too.
Yeah. There's clubs and stuff and places. Obviously the pandemic slowed that down for everyone, but you know, there's a lot of local places I go to that are worth the, you know, who knows how many people are going to be there. I'm just looking forward to getting back out at this point, you know. So
nice. Now, and Mike, usually, like, with musicians, we have influences that help shape the sound, you know, that we develop and then expand upon. Were there any comedic influences for you?
Influences, I mean, I like certain people, like Jimmy Dunn, he's a local guy. Bill Burr. I mean, I like these guys, but I wouldn't say my comedy is like theirs. I guess you know who is kind of an influence in a way is Brian Regan. You know him, right?
Yeah, I've heard of Brian Regan.
Yeah, he's sort of that, like, quote unquote nice guy comedian. You know, like, he doesn't swear. He's clean. I would say if I had to rate my comedy, I'd say because it would probably be PG at the most.
Yeah.
You've heard something, like, it is probably PG at the most. Like, I don't really swear a lot.
Yeah, you keep it actually pretty clean, and it's very easy to kind of go blue collar with it, but you intertwine it where you push the envelope, but you don't necessarily make it offensive.
Yeah. And anything that I feel is like too easy joke, like being like Legally Blind, like I've cut it out. I've cut a couple jokes out because I'm like, this is like, okay, I'm gonna move on from this joke because this is too, like, you know how you just cut the fat sometimes and you're like, all right, I don't need this joke anymore, or I don't need like about going on a blind date, which people love, but like, like I don't really want to keep saying that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and it was a funny joke, but sometimes it's kind of like when you're developing new material, you kind of ask your kind of like, I'm guessing as a musician that I do, I'm guessing as a comedian, you do the same thing. Does this work? Is it a hit?
Yeah. And you only got certain places, you have limited time. So it's like, you got to put your best stuff on there, like, especially if you ever go on TV, you only get a certain amount of time to talk. So you got to make sure your best stuff is on there. So eventually things get kind of thrown to the side, as I'm sure with you, like with music, there's songs you probably haven't played in a while and you go back and revisit. There's jokes I haven't done in a while that I go back and revisit every now and then just for fun to see if they still have staying power,
Yeah.
Or maybe they're not relevant anymore. Like I did a joke about living with a married couple. Remember that? There was a married couple I live with that was very awkward. I don't live with them anymore. I could do that joke still, but like I kind of put that one away. So I did revisit it though a couple of like years later, and it's kind of funny to hear like people still get a kick out of some story like that.
Yeah, it's probably funny in retrospect, but kind of like you were saying, you kind of have to keep the material fresh, because if not, you're just going to basically do the same routine.
Yeah, and that's it too. Like you want to just you don't want to be like a one-trick pony. You want to talk about, you want to stay relevant and talk about stuff. Oh, also another thing, I don't do a lot of politics at all, really.
Yeah, and there's comedians who can pull it off, and there's comedians who can't or won't, and there's nothing wrong with either side of that either.
Yeah, I mean, I took you to an open mic. You came to one of my mics one night in Worcester, and you saw a whole, I think, a pretty good grab bag of type of stuff that people say, So, but again, I always give people credit for going up there. So.
Oh, absolutely. I think it takes a sheer amount of courage and audacity to be able to pull that off. Like for me, I go up with a guitar, and some people just need a mic.
Yeah, you can you go on stage with a guitar. Like, does doing comedy to you seem does that seem like, whoa, like
it's foreign to me. It's a different animal, like I'm looking for a different emotion, and to make somebody laugh, I don't think I have. It's not that I can't do it. It's just that I don't think it's my strong suit.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're definitely funny, but I think, well, it's all about what you're passionate about too. Like your thing is definitely music,
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's like we were talking about, like, you started off with acting, and then you did a little bit of writing and script work and ideas there, but you kind of found through those processes, you kind of found your strength in comedy,
Yeah, and I think that's what that's the big thing, is you just try things and then see what sticks. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
I'm sure, you go through different sounds of styles and things. You just try something and then like, oh yeah, this really fits. And I think another thing I like about comedy, which is probably similar, and I don't know if you like this about music, but I like the travel. I love being like looking at my calendar and like, even if it's just small, like around here, like I love, okay, I'll be in Beverly Wednesday, I'll be in Cambridge Thursday. You know what I mean? Like Alston Sunday. It keeps things fresh and like active. So that's definitely something I missed throughout the pandemic, as I'm sure everyone has, so.
Yeah. And that's true. It's like, as life starts to go back to normal, you're like, now it's time to start getting back out there, and, doing something online is great. And doing, like, I do live streams on Saturday nights on this very channel. And those are fantastic, and I love them, and I will continue to do them. But I also miss that roar of the crowd, that audience.
Yeah.
That symbiotic energy that you kind of share with them. And I know you probably have that same effect,
Yeah, I miss that. I mean, there's nothing like, I mean, I've done some Zoom things and you hear laughs, but they're kind of always delayed, and you're like, oh, okay, they're laughing at that. Okay. So I definitely like the real life, you know, and just being out and about. Like I miss the ambient sounds of, like, that's why I'm looking forward to getting back into like those places, because I just even miss being in like the restaurant scene, you know, like that.
Yeah.
That was where I was spending 4 out of my 5 nights a week, you know. So I definitely excited about getting back out to do that. I think I may try to hit New York City at some point too. You know, you got to expand and do some things. And grow. I've mostly been Boston and New England so far is where I've been, and other than that one show in LA. So, you know, you got to kind of develop and hone your skills, I think, in a smaller city, and then because you want to have your good stuff for New York, you know.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want to go to New York, what I did on my second one, and have nothing. Like you don't want to do that.
No, you definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah. I think people are definitely willing to give people second chances if they're come back with good stuff. But it's just amazing. It's especially from my second gig to where it felt like everyone was against you, you know, just staring at you, to like literally the next one, everyone's your, like, you know, well, not knowing who was at that second gig, but everyone after I met, they're like, it's not only just faces, it's like I know their names, you know, and they love my material. And I know, and I can tell people's laughs too. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, she's here. That's cool.
Yeah, and I think you kind of nailed it. When you're going to a bigger market like New York, you want to make sure that you're bringing your A game, because, you know, in a bigger market, bigger challenges, sometimes even meaner crowds. I've heard stories from other comedians through their biographies where they did great in like Philadelphia, or they did great in parts of Jersey, but when they got to New York and certain venues, even the audience is a little more vicious and a little more holds you to a higher level if you're going to be playing that stage. Yeah,
exactly. So that's why I feel like I'd be ready for it. Like I'm ready for it now. You know what I mean? No one's really ever heckled me. I think I went to one place late at night and people were all drunk, and they didn't really heckle me. Some guy was just talking loud. But
yeah, and that's a no when you're going to a comedy show. It's like, be respectful of the performer. It's like, you know, if it's one thing if you're bored, but to be disrespectful and kind of talk over the comedian is it's not acceptable.
I've seen. The thing is, I'm not really like, I don't really provoke the audience. There's some people who go up there and do that, and I've seen some back and forth, and I'm like, ooh. Like on both sides of it, I'm like, oh, I can't believe he did that, or he said that to him. And it just kind of awkward in the moment. But you know, I give people a lot of credit who are kind of the opposite of me, who are very like their shtick is a little, it's risque, or they say things and like it's like, ooh, but and when it works, and especially if that person off stage is a nice person, I know who they are. Like, oh, okay, you know, this is their shtick, you know. So I think that's what it's all about. Like the audience, when you get, like you said, going to New York, you have to have your A game, because they might not let you back in, like in the doors. So.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what usually any opportunity, it's very rare if you flop that you're going to get a chance to make up. You usually either get it right the first time and with performances, or that door is closed to you. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. It's like you know, they're not going to keep, there's so many people want to go to New York and get in those clubs. You gotta impress them. You know what I mean? And I think the thing, you know, my situation has always helped me, because I think a lot of times people remember me, which is great. You know what I mean? Like out of like a sea of people that do comedy, I think I get told that I'm like, they remember my stuff, which is just good to know, I guess, you know?
Yeah. And that's great.
Especially if you're, you know, trying to get into a bigger market. And the last thing you want to do, by the way, and I'm sure everyone's done this, is read someone's famous as Wikipedia, because it makes it sound like they just became famous, and it's really not like that. You know, they spent much time grind. Wikipedia doesn't post the grind, you know, in there.
Yeah, and that's a great way of putting it too. It's like there's no such thing as in entertainment. There's no such thing as an overnight success.
Nope.
It's like you might see the latter end of what somebody's put together, but it's never overnight. It's years of playing out. It's years of, you know, getting booed, or people ignoring you when you're trying to tell a joke, or, you know, or
it's amazing how many famous people like Bill Burr, I've heard him talk about, like got just absolutely destroyed. And you think like, how is that possible? The guy's awesome. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, he kind of learned from getting destroyed too. If you know, like I'm, you know, I've heard his interviews too, where it's like he became a little more antagonistic because of the fact that other people were booing and heckling, not just him, but other comedians that influenced him. So I think he did a show, I think it was might have been New York, might have been New Jersey. No, it was Philadelphia, where he was doing a show with somebody who got him on the bill, and they heckled him. They heckled the guy, and he went off on Philly. And there's actually, I think you can look it up on YouTube. There is a segment on Bill Burr going off on that.
I could see it. I could definitely see it. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
But he probably won people over after that.
Well, that's just it. You know, usually if you do it right, you usually gain. It's kind of like the schoolyard bully situation where sometimes you got to sock somebody in the mouth.
Yeah.
And then you get their respect, and you probably end up becoming friends with them down the road.
Yeah, I'm sure that happens a lot. Yeah, exactly. And then you want to go on. And the thing too with comedy, you're there to make them laugh. Like I've seen people just like going out and saying whatever, like disgusting things or provocative things. Like the whole point, if you ask me anyways, is to make them laugh, the audience there, you know? Like I want them to go out and have like a good time afterwards and be like, oh, that was fun, you know?
Yeah, and that's a great point to make too, man, because when you're going out there, you want to get laughs. Some people go out there for a reaction, but you're actually going out there for the laugh.
Yeah. I think there's some comedians who definitely go just for the reaction, for the shock value.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not my style for sure. The good old fashioned laughs and getting to meet people after who come up to you and like, hey, that was awesome. Like, oh, thanks. You know, somebody you never would have talked to, never would have met, but they just happen to see your stuff and they like it. So again, going back to the whole thing, something you create, something you think of. And it's funny too, like I don't know if you've had this experience too, like sometimes you think something's going to be great and it's not. And then the reverse, you're like, oh my gosh, they're laughing at this. Okay, well, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of, you do get that with certain material, like as a performer myself with music. Yeah, it definitely happens too, where you're like, you weren't expecting people to like that song over another song, you know?
And you're like, okay, I have to just, you know, going forward, you know, I have to include that more.
Integrate it in, absolutely.
Yeah, I actually seen, by the way, there's a couple, especially female, I've seen female comedians who play songs, you know, that do the whole song and comedy thing, which is good, I think, if it's done right. And, you know, they have to have some musical background too to be able to do that. So that's obviously something good. It's funny, even going to like your shows, I can tell when you guys are like, all right, we got to do a little crowd work here, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, you want to engage your audience, you know. Yeah. Because the work, like, I think this is where I think there's some similarities. If you get booed, that means they listened. If you get cheered, that means they listened. Even if it's like a subtle murmur or a clap. But when you have somebody looking down at their phone or no reaction at all from the audience, they're just there. And
do you ever get that at your shows? Have you ever seen a guy do that, and does that piss you off? Because like I said, I don't know how I deal with that because I don't really notice it.
It probably has happened, but I usually lock in on a few people in the audience and see their reactions. And, you know,
that's got to be great though.
It
seeing
is
the actual.
So when you see somebody feeling it, it's kind of like you're feeding off them. You're feeding off of them, feeding off of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so you see them digging it and feeling the music, and they're bobbing their heads, or they're dancing on the floor, you know, and you feed off of that because it's like, all right, yeah, you know, my music's getting a good reaction from them. But then you have that other time, and I've seen it. It's happened to me where on the same night where somebody's really digging it, there could be somebody just in the background that came in, checked it out, goes to the bar, gets a beer or gets a drink, and then they're literally looking down at their phone and having a drink. And it's like, they're there because somebody brought them there, or they're there maybe to check it out. And maybe I didn't do a good enough job to get a reaction from them, but you know, it's stuff that you work on, and it happens across the board.
Yeah, no, I think that thing right there, or the guy that's got their arms crossed, like the unimpressed with what you're saying thing, is that would, I think scares everyone. That sort of thing would scare people from doing it. And like at first it's like, oh man, I don't want to be in a room with a bunch of those guys. But it's like, you can't really focus. You can't think like that. You just have to focus on who likes your stuff. You know what I mean? Exactly. I've definitely realized this, and I'm sure you have too. I appreciate the people who like my stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Here. like they're the ones that like they're paying money, they're supporting you, they're laughing at your stuff. They're like I said, I have a lot of recordings and I can go back and listen, like, oh, that person's there, and you just hear them intently listening to your stuff and then giving out those genuine laughs. It's like, yeah, it's a great all around feeling, you know, as opposed to just
absolutely,
you focus on those people and not that guy in the back, you know.
Yeah, and it's because it's very easy to get into that trap of, you know, I'm going to make that person recognize me.
Yeah, yeah, it becomes like a game. Like you don't want, like that's not your goal, is to win that guy, win that person over, whoever it is, you know.
And if you win people over that, you know, and an audience digs you, that's fantastic. But it's great when it's natural and you're not having to cater or pander to them, to that one person, when you have a group full of people enjoying your material.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do too is to say things that they're not expecting at all come out of my mouth. That are like, again, I'm not like provocative or dirty really, but like sometimes I'll say something that's kind of out of left field and like, whoa, like he said that kind of thing. And it's like, all right, they're listening still, you know.
Good, and it's nice to be able to do that kind of stuff. You know, you just test the audience a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Mike, what are you currently working on, man? Like project wise, are you said you were working on some new material for some jokes when you get back out there?
Yeah, I'm actually going to probably do a gig this week in Worcester, kind of just like, you know, kind of get back out there. So like it'll literally be my first gig live since March 11th. I did the last night before the pandemic happened last year. I did comedy in Beverly. So it's been 15 months. So I'm ready to do that in Worcester. So I've definitely been writing. I try to make it a habit to write one thing per day. And because that's kind of the thing, you know, I know Jerry Seinfeld does that, you know, once a day and you don't break the chain. But, you know, some days you're just like, oh, I can't think of anything. And other days it kind of just like, you get in that zone and things just keep coming to you, you know?
Yep.
So what I'm finding is just to put myself in that zone more. And you know how easy to just get distracted with stuff. You just gotta like shut everything down, you know, especially for what we do, you know, when you're writing, the writing process, I'm sure it's similar for you. You got to just like shut everything down. I don't know about you, but I can't work with like internet next to me if I'm going to be writing jokes. Like I'll just be distracted, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to hit the do not disturb, put that little moon symbol up on your cell phone and, you know, free write or just let whatever's in you come out, you know.
It's amazing, how much you can get done with that. Oh, and another thing too is I'm not really a Twitter joker. Like a lot of people will just kind of try things, you know, write and send it out there in the world.
Yeah,
I think I talked to my brother about this. I'm more of an in-person person, if that makes sense at all. I'm more somebody in person, like hearing it.
You're a live guy.
Yeah. So I'd rather be in front of people than just test it out on Twitter all the time. I think it's good to have a Twitter, but I'm not going to just throw stuff out there every day to people. So again, test it out in person, you know. It's nice to get likes, but I'd rather hear the laugh, you know.
That's great. And you said you because when we were talking before, you mentioned you were doing not just joke writing, you were working on some other projects writing wise.
One thing I've been this idea I've been working on for probably 10 years is a summer murder mystery, like a novel.
Yeah.
So I've been working on that and I'm really trying to put it together. My title for it is Pier 49, and that's what I'm working with. I'd like to get that finished by the end of the summer. So the thing I find is I have to kind of stay on one thing. I can't jump from joke, novel. It's like it's two different things going on, you know?
Yeah.
And I always had a problem with that before. I think you seem to be pretty good about it on your crew. Like you kind of hone down. I always was like, oh, I have an idea for this. And it's like, the more I stayed focused, the better things got, you know, the more I got done.
Yeah.
More jokes I could write, the more ideas I could have for something else. It's better, I think, to focus on one thing at a time, you know, instead of like, oh, I got these great ideas for all this stuff, you know, one at a time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there's something strangely grounding about that too, where you kind of balances and centers you out because your head's not going all over the place thinking, okay, well, I can make this funny, or I can do this, or I can do this. You're like, nope, these are the parameters on what I'm currently doing. And it kind of like just centers you out a little bit.
Yeah. And in kind of a way too, you're your own boss. So you're like, no, that's good. Or that's, you know, that's like, I've literally sometimes wrote out like a quarterly goals, you know. I don't know if you've ever done anything like that, or like monthly goal, yearly goal, like what you want to get done. It kind of keeps you kind of keep yourself in check, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, because guess what? No one else is gonna. So
no, exactly. You know, it's like when you're in the, you know, in the grind, and you're kind of just trying to push yourself through to hopefully reach that next tier or that next level, you know, nobody's going to do it for you. You got to buckle down, and whether it's writing music or writing comedy, you got to push yourself through it.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to support you and be there for you, but people want to see people want to see your finished product, you know.
Exactly.
They don't want to write your product for you. Nobody wants to write your songs for you. They want to hear you play them live.
Exactly.
Just like, you know, nobody's going to write my material for me. They want to hear, you know, it put out. I mean, I have people been like, hey, you know, it'd be a great idea. And sometimes they're good. Sometimes I do listen to if people have ideas like that. Somebody actually gave me a button for one of my jokes one time, and it was more on the dirtier side, and I tried it and I liked it. And somebody listened to my material, and they pointed that it was actually Erica Rhodes, comedian on Twitter.
Oh, nice.
She listened to my material, and she pointed out, she's like, that's great. She's like, that joke at the end, I felt like wasn't you, and like it wasn't actually created by me. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? So again, I think it just goes back to the whole point: stay true to yourself, you know, like what you do best. So
yeah, and I think that's great. I think, you know, once you develop an identity on who you are as an artist, or you know what, I consider comedy an art as well. So once you're being true to once you figure out who you are as an artist, you don't necessarily deviate it, but you evolve from it, you know. Like, you expand that foundation. You don't just do a complete 180 either.
Yeah, they call it your voice in comedy, and they say it usually takes 3 to 4 years to find it, and that's kind of where I've been at. So like I definitely know like where I'm, you know, coming from as far as like my point of view. And that was probably the biggest thing from the second gig I did to afterwards. It was like I found like where I was headed, what my voice was going to be, what I was going to talk about, you know.
Yeah,
because you got to have a point of view for people to listen to your stuff, you know. I mean, how many great comedians like just have these awesome point of views, or like interesting things they talk about, you know, that people enjoy listening to. So and I found too, you can be strong in opinion, you can have a personality, but even not be the loudest one out there too, you know.
Yeah,
people still listen to you if you know. So
and you said you're going to be getting back out there this summer to do some comedy shows. Are there any that you want to plug and promote?
Well, one thing that I'm going to be doing is I auditioned and I got in to do comedy for the National Federation for the Blind. They're doing a convention in July. The convention is just for blind and visually impaired individuals, but like you'd have to know someone that's you know, that to be able to register for it. But the events and stuff, like the comedy thing, I know they're gonna video, so I'll have a finished product after I could show people, you know, because they're gonna. So you'll actually get to hear the comedy with the, you know, hopefully the laughs in between, and then they'll send it out to people. So
that's great.
Yeah,
and that's probably gonna air before this episode does. So if it becomes available, we'll post a link to that video in this description.
Okay.
That way people can find you. Yeah.
We'll I can send it your way. But yeah, I mean, it's more of just kind of getting back out there. I'm sure you're dying to get back out there too, you know, just getting
I am, man. You know I am.
It's just kind of getting back into like, okay, this feels normal again, you know, kind of thing. And you know, doing local stuff, and then just I kind of eventually start to head to other places and do it. So as of right now, those are my that's the biggest thing I have. It's kind of ironic, right before the pandemic hit, I did have a bunch of things planned, but obviously everyone had to re-scrap everything. So
and
so yeah,
you know, and I think this, you know, I'm not going to say it was great because it was very challenging, but opportunities arose and I can tell you from my end, I didn't perform live as much as I wanted to, or as much as I have in the past, because everything was closed, but I performed more consistently and regularly with these Saturday night streams. And I know that that's been beneficial for other people too, where they were kind of, they had to alter the way they reached their audience.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example. Like, you're just like, well, I can't get out there. I'm gonna bring them to me on like, we live in a great time for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
with technology, you can literally make yourself the event. So
yeah. And so I kind of, besides writing comedy, I got more into YouTube. I got my YouTube channels. I've been kind of working on a series called Blind Adventures, and what I want to do with that, I'm kind of going to restart that too. I only did it sort of locally, or like literally around my house and around town, because that's all I could do. I want to start doing more like Blind Adventures, different cities, or like, kind of, it's obviously like a tour guide type of thing. And different places and stuff like that. So that's something I worked on. Yeah, I basically think if you didn't come out of the pandemic with something like something created, or at least an idea of something that you're going to do, it's like, how are you spending your time?
Exactly. I mean, and and you kind of nailed it. It kind of made you branch off into different things. You're writing not only are you writing new material for when you get back out there this summer, and throughout the fall, you're also kind of gave you an opportunity to write a book that you've been thinking about doing for a couple of years.
Yeah, and no excuse on the time too. Like, you have all the time to do it,
Exactly. What else are you gonna do?
Yeah, but it's great to see, and I definitely believe this too, that, as I'm sure you do too, like it's definitely the most adaptable people are the ones that do the best. Are the ones that you just adapt to your situation. Like, if you can't adapt to it, then you're gonna have trouble. Like, all the people that adapted well, and in the pandemic, and doing however they could, like you with your Saturday night streams, people doing Zoom comedy. I know there was a lot of concerts that were on Zoom.
Oh, so yeah,
people are still trying to do something.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these technology companies kind of advanced. There's bands that literally filmed basically, like, did full album performances with 4K cameras, and mixed the audio like they would, even though it was recorded live, and it was a concert.
Yeah.
And
you just got to adapt. Yeah.
So exactly, like, this show came out of that opportunity. The live streams that I do on Saturdays, the gaming ones I do on that multi-platform through Streamlabs, I do it on on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then the musical performance on Saturday night. So you're keeping your channel and your brand consistent, and I know that you're doing that too. So we're gonna, by the way, for the audience, all those links will be posted in the description below on where you can find Mike on YouTube, on Instagram, if he's on, Facebook, Twitter, all those handles will be in the description below. Mike, before we wrap up, where can everyone find you? I know what I just mentioned that, but if you want to shoot them out, rapid fire, your handles.
Yeah, pretty much all of them. Twitter.com, Instagram.com. It's /Mike Karsok. So if you just go to any of those and type in Mike Karsok, Karsok. Great thing about me is I have a very common first name, but a very uncommon last name. So you should be able to find me. I'm the only Mike Karsok on there.
Awesome.
And same thing with YouTube. I do have the Mike Karsok YouTube channel that I have on here as well. So
yeah. And before we wrap up as well, anything you wanted to plug and promote? You mentioned that you had something around 4th of July weekend. You were doing a Zoom comedy.
Yep. National Federation of the Blind comedy. Yeah, as of right now, it's just getting back out there to see what I can get under my belt. So if anything comes along before this episode airs, I'll definitely shoot it your way. But
absolutely.
I'm literally just getting out there now, so we'll see. Hopefully there'll definitely be a lot more stuff to talk about.
That'll be great. That'll be great, man. And we'll have links for anything that you have in between now and when this episode airs. We'll have links to where people can see it and find you.
Sounds great, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Mike, thank you so much for making time, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. That was Mike Karsok. This is Alex Lopez and Alex Lopez Talks on the Alex Lopez Rocks YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a great one.